Today on Moviewallas, we talk about Nickel Boys and The Brutalist. It's time for Moviewallas. Hi, this is Joe.
Hi, it's Rashmi.
And Yazdi as well.
Moviewallas is your weekly dose of film reviews, movie news, and general banter in theatres, on DVD, online streaming, or in the back of an airplane. If you love the movies, this show is for you. Greetings.
Hello.
Hello.
So we're going to be a little hurried again today.
I think our listeners might appreciate that.
It's true. If you're watching on YouTube,
Quick
I
and
found
fast, yes.
that short form YouTube
Yes.
does better. So if you haven't checked us out on YouTube, please do. YouTube.com/Moviewallas. And if you're there, give us a like and a subscribe. It will really help us. We
Do you do that thing where you
appreciate
go, subscribe here, subscribe there,
Oh, I can do that. You know, I've got to find the skills.
subscribe here?
My editing
Is it
skills
subscribe there?
are rudimentary.
Subscribe here.
We can do that. I'll see
Okay.
if I can
No,
come up with
no, no.
flashing
Okay.
logos and boxes. We can do gaudy Moviewallas.
Okay.
Gaudy Wallas. Okay. I don't think we have time
We don't.
today to do a Netflix pick, so we are going to hurry along into our reviews.
We'll throw some in the show notes.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, then you'll have to send me some.
I will.
Well, you better.
Mine is Lucky Logan.
Doggy
There you go.
And Rashmi, attention.
Yes.
She's paying attention to our Moviewallas dog Sawyer here. So,
And wouldn't you if she was near you?
well, somebody's got to tell us about Nickel Boys. Who's
Okay.
it going to be?
Yazdi is telling us about Nickel
Okay,
Boys.
so let's get going with our review of Nickel Boys.
Yes, so Nickel Boys is written and directed by Romail Ross, and I'm not familiar with this filmmaker. He shares writing credits with Jocelyn Barnes and Colson Whitehead. Nickel Boys is based on a very celebrated book from Colson Whitehead. He won the Pulitzer Prize for The Great Underground Railroad novel, which came out a few years ago, and he's been compared to, like, you know, he's been mentioned as a preeminent writer of African American stories, and his books do very well. So this movie is based on a book by Colson Whitehead, and the one-liner is that Nickel Boys chronicles the powerful friendship between two young African American men navigating the harrowing trials of reform school together in Florida. I looked at the list of actors, and the only familiar name there was Anjanou
Yes.
Ellis Taylor, who was in the movie with Denzel Washington and the two tennis daughters. The one that, not Denzel, sorry.
Will Smith.
Will Smith won
Yeah.
an Oscar for.
Yes.
So
She was the mother.
She was the mother in that movie, but it also stars Ethan Cole Sharp, Sam Malone, and Naja Bradley. This movie came out of nowhere, but it's getting a lot of buzz for consideration for year-end awards. So I presume that it registers pretty strong.
King Richard.
King Richard, that was the movie. You guys both saw it. I could not make it to the screening. Is the hype well earned?
Okay, so this is like sitting through a handheld Terrence Malick movie to me. It's very ethereal, and it's like Blair Witch Project meets Terrence Malick is how it felt to me. Not because of the horror, but because of the shaky camera. And the shaky camera from the first, it's all filmed in the first person's point of view. So often you're watching someone else's reaction to someone speaking off camera. It was so annoying to me. I closed my eyes because at one stage it was giving me kind of motion sickness, and then I actually fell asleep. It didn't keep my attention. Okay. And then I would periodically wake up and try to catch up. What I saw was interesting, but I did some reading about the story afterwards, and I wish it had followed the structure of the book a little bit more, because I think that would have been far more impactful. The payoff at the end, the end didn't justify the means, and this is such an important story to tell that I'm irritated with the movie.
So too lyrical.
Too ethereal, too experimentative, too much. But I don't know, Joe, you saw the movie.
So you've said some key things there, but I think, look, when the lights went down. Mm-hmm. Sorry, we're looking at the molestation here of our Moviewallas
dog. Yeah.
Miss Sawyer. When the lights went down in the theatre and immediately popped up with the 4:3 aspect ratio.
Yeah,
I was already irritated.
Yeah.
I was like, for me,
Yeah.
I don't know why that grates so much, but I feel like, we have these wonderful widescreen movie theatres, and
Yeah.
And when you narrow it down, I know it's to create a particular artistic point of view, but I'm like, use it. But then, Rashmi, the thing that you got upset with, I understand why. There is a very interesting way of shooting narrative, which is, let the camera be the person and let the world be happening to you as a viewer, and it's to put you in the position of the protagonist, the person in the story. And it was very unsettling. I'll say for the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie, I just thought it's not necessarily serving a purpose of driving the narrative. It's trying really hard to be something fresh, something new, something challenging. But once the movie kind of settled into the groove, and once I adapted to that particular viewpoint, and it did take about 10, 15 minutes, I kind of settled into it. And one of the things that the movie does is, at first you think the whole movie is going to be from the perspective of that one character.
Yeah.
But then at times it will periodically shift to be the viewpoint of a different character. And there's an interesting mechanism where they kind of show you that they're going to do that to you, so that they set you up to understand what's going to come next, right? And then the movie kind of settled more into its narrative, and its narrative is extraordinarily powerful. It is fictional, but it's based on some
reality,
that happened at a correctional facility for young boys, and it's extraordinarily powerful. It talks a lot about the African American experience in of the 1960s. It has some interesting kind of montages of things that are happening around the time, and it has a very big heart. By the time it got into its final act, I was very much with the characters. I was with them in their world, understanding their plight, the frustrations and the hopelessness of some aspects of what they were living through. It does a very interesting walk through time as well. So again, the movie it demands full attention. There's no way that you can watch this movie casually, and I felt for you, because I think because you were struggling with it, I know that you kind of lost attention from time to time, and I think there were some key things where without that particular, it wasn't even like a scene. It was that without that particular frame of footage, you would have lost what happened.
Yeah.
Like, when it switches from person to person, if you weren't watching at that particular instant in time, then you don't know who's been spoken to by whom and what. Right.
And it did that thing where it does the same scene from the other person's point of view, right? So it does the scene, and then suddenly you see the same scene from the other person's viewpoint, right?
It doesn't do that
and
much.
I understand, having done the reading afterwards, now I understand why that may have made sense and why it was being over clever. Mm-hmm. But I feel like in being over clever, it took something away from the important story. But it didn't work for me. I think it's good acting. Again, I think this is a really important story. It's a really important historical crime that has taken place, right? And we should know more about these. But it didn't resonate with me at all. I couldn't get on with this movie at all.
I think that's the biggest crime here. Like, I mean, it's a very, very powerful movie, and I think you have to
pay attention.
It demands a lot of you as the viewer. It's extraordinarily demanding because of the way it swings its camera around, and it forces you to pay attention, and then it jumps. It does all of these kind of strange jumps from place to place, from time to time, from timeline to timeline. You don't know who you're looking at. Suddenly you're in a scene in a different period of time. Yeah. discussing something that seems somewhat unrelated, and then you have to tie the two things together. So it's a puzzle of a thing.
And I read the book actually does that too. It's set between 1960 and 1980, I think, in the book itself. But
go ahead. Why don't you score?
I think this is a 5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I think that's a shame. I think you should absolutely give it another shot. I mean, it's taxing, but it's important. It will irritate people, and I'm normally the first
that's why
kind of say, no, you pretentious director, why don't you just tell a story?
Yeah, this is very pretentious, Joe.
And no, that's the thing.
No,
and I say that with absolute confidence in that I think. I understand the tricks being used. It's just they're not very well deployed at the beginning. It's only you kind of have to settle into its groove in order to kind of hear its music. It's like a live jazz thing, right? There's all these things going on, but if you can get into a place where they come together.
This is not for everyone. Let's just say that up front.
Sure. I mean,
it's not for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's probably more broadly accessible than you found it, but. And I only say that not to dismiss what you're saying, but I think you came into it kind of tired, right? And I think it's a movie that you can't. You need like 3 double espressos to go in to kind of follow it and go with where it is. I'm going to give it an 8. I think it's actually more powerful than that. But in terms of it's really stayed with me, and this story and what these boys went through, and the reading that I've done afterwards. And yes, it's a work of fiction, but speaking to a gentleman as we were coming out of the movie that had read the book, and he's saying it's a book that he's recommended to so many people that they emotionally cannot get through it, and that's kind of what I'm left with. Yeah,
and I kind of figured it would be more up your street because it's kind of like an injustice. It's an injustice. How the person ends up in this situation is an injustice of its own, right? It's like a Count of Monte Cristo, and I know those stories.
Count of Monte Cristo,
totally resonates with you. Like Les Miserables, it's like an injustice
where somebody is in a situation that's completely not of them. And they are powerless to break from that. It shows so many problems with the system. So it's emotionally resonant for me. 8 out of 10.
Okay. All right. So we're moving on then to the movie The Brutalist, which we all watched last night. This is 3.5 hours long. Had an intermission.
A little more than 3.5 hours.
It was like
3 hours and 37 minutes.
Okay. So when with a 20-minute intermission, when visionary architect Laszlo Toth and his wife Erzsébet flee post-war Europe in 1947 to rebuild their legacy and witness the birth of modern America, their lives are changed forever by a mysterious and wealthy client. This is directed by Brady Corbett, also written by Brady Corbett and Mona Fastvold, and it stars Adrian Brody, Felicity Jones, Guy Pearce, and a whole host of others. Yazdi, is the 3 hours and 37 minutes worth people's time?
This is what I wrote
on your letterbox.
I'm really looking forward to talking about this.
I was going to say, yes, you always answered. This is what I wrote on my letterbox.
I just have 3 paragraphs, but I'll just say the first paragraph. Yes, to answer your question, I think it easily earns its long run time, and I think The Brutalist is as much a grand melting pot story of an architect setting roots in America after escaping post-war Budapest as it is an indictment of the American dream that this film argues has always been curdled. This movie.
Good Lord, Yazdi.
Yes, isn't that good?
Are you sure you didn't use ChatGPT?
No, I did not. I wrote that.
That was impressive.
Yes, but
handy with the written word.
But jokes aside, I think this is the kind of movie which is like a movie with a capital M. It's a movie that Brady Corbett has made Vox Lux before, the movie with Natalie Portman, and one other movie that I haven't seen. This seems to me like the kind of movie that somebody's been working their entire career towards. It deals with all the big themes, and in a way, it's nothing less than the story of the melting pot that is the US, and how its underbelly sometimes is not as shiny and gleam as the world might think. There is a tone of of high class to everything in the movie, in the acting and how it's been constructed. We can talk about the structure of the movie as well. But I love this movie. We all saw it yesterday. I can't stop thinking about it.
Joe?
Why are you picking me? I wanted to hear your thoughts. Okay.
Do you want me to go first?
No, it's fine. Look, I mean, it's ambitious. It's so ambitious, and it's big, and it's bloated, and it suffocates under the weight of its own ambition. I mean, I really wanted to love it more than I did. Instead, I admired it. I must say, I really did admire this movie, and it had that kind of Paul Thomas Anderson feeling to it, where it's challenging and it's difficult, and the characters are flawed and dislikable and angry, but you're sympathetic with them. So it's too ambitious, and I feel I wouldn't know how to improve it, by the way, because I wouldn't shorten it, right? I mean, to me, I think every single minute of the movie has a place there. It's not the kind of thing where I'm like, I would have cut that 20 minutes from there and propelled it. It all deserves to be there, but I think maybe not as a single movie. You know, this is like a masterful mini series of sorts. It's epic. It's grand, and it spans years and decades, and the performances are absolutely phenomenal. Felicity Jones, I'm sorry, but she was miscast here.
Yes.
I didn't buy her, but Adrian Brody and Guy Pearce were absolutely fabulous to kind of see them play off each other. So yeah, a lot to say too, but I think my overriding sense is that they bit off more than they can chew, and it shows everywhere.
Yeah, I think I'm with Joe more than you, Yazdi. I didn't love this movie, but I admired it greatly. And it is a movie with a capital MOVIE, right? It is a big Hollywood spectacle. The problem I have with the movie is that no one seems to have an arc. And so if you look at the beginning, if you look at the movie from beginning to end,
that's fair, yeah.
Nothing really changes, and we're not really rooting for anyone. I think it's amazing to watch Guy Pearce and Adrian Brody delivers in droves. But I didn't feel like I went on a journey with the movie. And so it just feels like we roll from scene to scene, which is magnificent. And the sets are great, and the costume's great. And the dialogue's good, but I just didn't understand who is the brutalist. Is Guy Pearce the brutalist, or is Adrian Brody the brutalist? What is the brutalist? So I just feel like it was a lot of pomp and ceremony. I think it's going to get a lot of award love because it's just bloated and it's award fodder. But I didn't love it. I didn't fall in love with this, and I didn't really root for any of them.
I did fall in love with it, and I keep thinking about it. I fully agree that there is not much of a character arc because the Adrian Brody character
doesn't change.
He doesn't change, right? He's this genius who's very good being an architect, but he's also a dog, right? He's a bit of a, so he's, and that never changes. But I think that's true of most people. The arc that I saw was the arc of America, that, we believe that we are a melting pot where everybody is welcome, but there is so many things which are dragging the country down. And he wants to make this idealized version of a structure, right? He wants to make this building that people will be forever amazed. And it's part chapel, part library, part a place where people can meet. And in spite of the best of his ideals, it takes him almost 30 years. And even then, it almost doesn't complete it. It falls off multiple times. And he has the luxury of coming into contact with a very rich man who is willing to kind of, finance his dreams. But ultimately, his dreams kind of remain dreams. So I think it's for me, it was like a sad story about the promise of America in the 40s and 50s of being the most idealistic, most wonderful country in the world. And over a period of decades, kind of, not because of anything intentional, but that dream is slowly curdled. That's how I saw it.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm giving the movie too much credit by doing that.
And I agree with Joe. I didn't understand. I think we could have completely have done without the Felicity Jones,
yeah.
that part of the story. Like, it didn't quite show the struggle that this married couple had endured, and then how it felt for them to come together. It just felt kind of papered over a little bit, and then
Well, I was waiting for the flashback.
Yeah, me too. Like,
I feel like there's a whole lot that wasn't said about the events prior to the movie's timeline.
and I think it's not trying to be look, the event that they're escaping from is the Holocaust.
Understood.
And I think that they didn't want to make this another Holocaust movie, although you can never have too many. But it didn't want to be that movie. I think I admire them for not concentrating on the event itself, rather the life that happens afterwards. But then you're kind of, it doesn't earn its sympathy. It doesn't earn empathy for me.
And I think that's by design. I mean, again, everyone's kind of spiky and...
I almost wish that it had been the Guy Pearce story. That's the really interesting character. And I don't know if it's just because he's done such a superior performance. That was the interesting, like, here's a man, very, very wealthy, clearly from, he explains, from a single parent. That's the interesting story to me. Yeah, self-made man, but he's not all good either.
I think the brutalist, to answer your question earlier, it's just a term for a particular kind of architecture. So the architecture, which is just concrete and glass,
I see. Okay,
is called brutalist architecture.
I didn't know that. Thank you for educating me.
And he is
the
the movie claims that he's the inventor of the brutalist
and it's
architecture.
Fiction.
Right.
It's fiction.
Yeah.
Which was very sad for me to learn, by the way, because I felt like this movie was... all the way through, I had this sense that this movie was some sort of a biopic of some great architect, and so the fact that I hadn't heard of him, his name Laszlo Todd. Sounds like it's a legit sounding architect name, but certainly I struggled afterwards knowing that it was a work of fiction. Because it feels
like a biopic.
So real. Yeah, it does. I mean, it really does.
Actually, I stand corrected. The real Laszlo Toth did exist. This is a biopic. Sorry, I just looked on Wikipedia.
But it said I also looked and it said it was a fictional.
So it's a fictionalized probably version of Laszlo Toth, right? Because that Laszlo Toth. Anyway, he was born in Hungary. He moved to Australia in 1965.
So it's a fictionalized version of his life. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
he created the Pietà at Vatican City at the St. Peter's Basilica.
So it's inspired
by him. But I'm surprised
but it's not his story.
I'm surprised that they so freely use his name.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so scores.
I mean, gosh, it's...
We could do our own podcast on this one, right?
Yeah.
You could just...
It left me exhausted, but not tired, if you know what I mean.
It kept my interest, considering, look, we saw Nickel Boys the day before, and like we just said, that lost me in the first 10 minutes. This one, I literally was watching all 3 hours and 37 minutes.
Yeah, and it has these like little montages every now and then that are like so musically done. Like,
the music is brilliant.
It really is. The whole thing is just crafted. It's kind of like there's a scene in the movie in a quarry where they have this fine Italian marble, and the whole movie feels like a polished piece of that Italian marble. It's something to behold and stand back and look at, but enjoy. I'm not there. So, gosh, I would recommend people watch this, but I can't say that I loved it. I'm going to be generous and give it a 7. But it was hard work. I mean, it really was. This left me completely drained.
Yazdi.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, this movie every time reminded me of There Will Be Blood with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, no, I literally just saw a comment here about that.
As well as little bits of The Master. So it is definitely, this filmmaker is definitely inspired by the works of Paul Thomas Anderson. For me, I just think that, this movie is such a finely crafted piece of work that I don't have a choice but to kind of submit to how beautifully it's been put together. It's a labor of love in every way. Like the music, it scans 4 decades, but it seems always to be playing background in the music. Even when people are talking, there's music playing in the background, which is of that time. The cinematography, by the way, we never talked that this is shot on 70mm. Nobody's shooting on 70mm film anymore. There's so much, if you're a movie lover, there's so much to admire. And I think even when some of the big ideas that the script is going for don't fully germinate, and it's going for a lot of big ideas, it has so much to say about something, so much to say about so many things. I think the movie is so ambitious, so original, and so bracingly severe that I had no choice but to kind of submit to it. And I'm thinking, what other filmmaker, other than Martin Scorsese, perhaps, is demanding and getting this kind of commitment for the kind of deep immersion that this movie does. It is 3 hours and 37 minutes long. And I should say, this is not the kind of a movie where the camera just rests on somebody's face for like 5 minutes and you're bored and you're like, there's things happening constantly. It's not ponderous at all. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of plot. Things are always moving forward. It was a dance to me, and it was like a perfectly executed dance. I completely agree with everything the both of you have said, but I'm just in awe of the filmmakingness which has created this amazing epic. So for me, it was like I'm in heaven. So it is a 9 out of 10 for me. I really, really liked it. In spite of its shortcomings, I didn't care for the last 5 minutes of the movie at all. Completely unnecessary. But anyway, yeah.
Yawn. 6 out of 10 for me. It didn't work. I mean, I admired it and I watched it and it was entertaining in the moment, but it's a big yawn for me.
It'll be all over all the awards.
It will be. It absolutely will. And it does. It deserves acting. It deserves cinematography. It deserves production. Right. It's like we said, it's a movie with a capital M, but it's too much.
I even loved.
It's like a plate of foie gras.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
I even loved the credits of the movie, both at the beginning and at the end.
It's so twee and precious.
I loved it.
It's so
the
precious.
Move from the right to the left.
That's what I think I'm objecting. It's a little precious.
But it's ambitious, right? It's not doing the same thing that everybody else is doing.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah.
The joy of movies.
Yes. On that note, we will bid ye farewell. We are late for our dinner appointment with our dear friends, so we're going to wrap up the podcast now. Until next time, which will be a few weeks because there is some travel ahead of us. Too many movies, too little time. A goodbye from me.
And me.
And me as well.